My name is Rissa Miller. I've been a vegan for 26 years, but I have been in love with plants forever. There's a great shot of my parents having me as a little girl eating dirt under a raspberry bush, and that's kind of indicative of who I was meant to become. So today I'm going to talk for animal advocates about foraging, which has become one of my newer passions in the past few years. Basically, when you forage, you're taking advantage of valuable plants and nutritious food that is provided by nature for free. And oddly enough, most of these things are considered weeds or in some way undesirable, even though many of them are nutritionally more beneficial than the cultivated plants and greens that we eat and buy from the grocery store. So if you want to get started in foraging, there are a couple things you should know first. Absolutely positively make sure you know what you're doing. Take a class, get an online class, and 100% of the time have a guidebook or field book with you. This is one of the guidebooks from my class, and whatever region of the world you are in, you should get a book that is specific to your region. This is Northeast because I live in the Northeast Mid-Atlantic area. It covers a wide range of plants, trees, and flowers that grow in this region of the world. It does not cover mushrooms. That's a whole other thing, and it would be a whole other video. The idea is that you have a system to identify your plants that makes sense and is reliable. Yes, you can definitely use pictures and resources available online. There are actually some really good apps and Facebook groups that you can use to help identify plants when you're in the field. However, remember, they're just people. They aren't necessarily the knowledgeable botanist who wrote a book like this. So to get started foraging, you don't need a ton of equipment. Something that will work, like scissors or snips like this, are great, especially when you're harvesting simple things with soft stems like dandelions. I love when people start foraging by foraging things they already know. So dandelions are a wonderful place to begin. The flowers, stems, and leaves are all entirely edible. A few thoughts about dandelions. Make sure you're not picking them from a place that has been sprayed with pesticides or other chemicals that could make you sick or kill you. Make sure you're not trespassing on somebody's property and that you have permission to forage where you are. Make sure you don't forage within 6 feet of a moderately busy road or within 30 feet of a major highway or train tracks. There's just too much residual chemicals from the vehicles, from the trains, and it's not safe to consume things that grow that close to those areas. So dandelions, which tastes a lot like regular honey made from bees, but no bees are injured. You can pick the greens and use them in salads or any number of other recipes. I always say if you can use arugula or spinach, you can use dandelion greens. They are a little more bitter, and the later you get into the summer, the hotter it becomes, the more bitter they are. You can actually just pick these with your fingers like I just did, or you can use the snip method. When you are picking flowers, never take them all because pollinators need some too. One of my favorite things to do with dandelion flowers and greens together is make vegan walnut burgers with dandelions. It's a new recipe I came up with this year, and it will be on the Animal Advocates blog soon so that you can make it as well. So this is one of my favorite plants to forage. It is wild garlic mustard, and it's really easy to recognize. Nothing else looks like it. The top leaves are pointy like this, and the bottom leaves are sort of round and curvy like that. And this is in the same family as kale and mustard greens. The thing about this plant is that nothing else grows around it. You can see I'm sitting in like a forest of it right now. The thing that it does that's so unique is that it puts out a chemical into the ground so that nothing else will grow. The entire plant is edible from the top to the bottom. So we're going to harvest some of it right now to take. This is a forager's knife. It's also called a Japanese garden knife. It's not a weapon. It's definitely used for foraging and gardening. The idea is that you can use it to dig out a root. So you apply a lot of pressure. It works a lot better than most other gardening tools because it is, in fact, a knife. Because this plant isn't invasive, it's good to try to take the whole plant Look at that beautiful root. So when you harvest this, you can eat the root. It's really, really spicy. It's like horseradish. And you know it's been a good day foraging when you've got plenty of dirt under your fingernails. So this is kind of an enchanted spot that we found foraging today. There are tons of edible plants all around me right now. And I'll start with the dead nettle. Dead nettle is one of my favorites because it sounds so goth. And it's a member of the mint family. You can always tell you've got a member of the mint family because of this perfectly square stem. It's also a little bit hollow when you squeeze it. Almost every plant that you run across with a square stem like this is going to be a member of the mint family. Now, dead nettle doesn't smell minty, but you can always identify it by the top purple flowers and some of the purple leaves that come in. You can use this any way you would use mint. You could put it in a pilaf, you could put it in a salad, you can make tea with it, and it does have its own medicinal properties as well, just like every other member of the mint family. So in this little patch, we've got dead nettle, but we also have cleavers. Cleavers are among my favorite plants because they will, in fact, cleave to you. They will just sort of stick right to your clothes or hair, or if you're taking your dog foraging like I do a lot of the time, they will stick to your dog. Cleavers are completely edible. They are very high in iron and other fabulous nutrients, and they're just so super fun that I don't know why you wouldn't want to forage cleavers. Cleavers can be made into salad or pesto. You can add them to soups. Again, another great wild green to add to your meals. Moving along, there's a little bit of chickweed left. Chickweed is one of the first plants to come out in the spring, and it is so good for you. It is higher in iron than spinach. It looks like this. This is a chickweed plant. It's sort of at the end of its life cycle right now. It's gone to seed. The seeds are completely edible, and the leaves are peppery. They taste like arugula. It's one of my very favorites. I usually collect a whole lot of it in the spring, and I freeze it into pesto cubes that I can eat all year long. So, so, so good. Another wonderful plant here, and I know you already know this one, because if you've ever lived anywhere where there are people, you have seen wild onions and garlic before. They are those dark green things that grow up out of lawns or in city sidewalks, and they are 100% edible, maybe not from city sidewalks, and you can eat the whole thing. This guy right here. Anywhere you would use chives or scallions, you can use wild onions and garlic. Now, there is a look-alike. If you are harvesting wild onions and garlic and you see a white vein running up the plant, that is not what you want. That is probably Star of Bethlehem, and you might find white flowers on it, and that is poisonous. You should not eat it. This will always have a bulb at the bottom, just like a little itty-bitty baby onion. And when you open it up, it smells like garlic or onion. No look-alike smells like garlic or onion. Only garlic and onion smells like garlic and onion. And again, if you don't spray your lawn in the neighborhood you live in, you could definitely harvest this right from your own lawn. You've probably got plenty of it growing right now. Usually this grows all season long, and it can be a continuous source of food. All summer long, you don't have to buy chives or scallions because you've got them available for free. Another tool I use when I'm foraging is my foraging bag. This is a wax linen bag. The cool thing about it is that it fits all of this stuff when you're foraging. And honestly, believe me, you get a lot before you realize it. It has pockets for my tools, but then at the end of the day, it unsnaps and I can slide everything out the bottom so that all the stuff I foraged earlier just pops right out. There's one plant I feel like everybody should know. This plant grows in the country, it grows in the city, it grows in the suburbs. It's called plantain. This is not the banana kind of plantain, it's this leafy green plantain. And this is actually another invasive plant. It came to North America from Europe with the original colonists. And they used to cultivate it. It is a very nutritious plant, but it's also a highly medicinal plant. And that's why I feel like I really want everyone to be able to identify it. So it grows low and flat to the ground like this. So you'll find it along pathways, highly populated areas everywhere. The native population used to call it white man's footprint, basically because it pops up anywhere the soil gets hard and people walk. You can always recognize it because of the striations on it. And what makes it so magical is that it's great if you are outside and you have a bug bite or an open cut. What you will do, this sounds weird, but just go with me on this. What you will do is put it in your mouth, chew it up, and put it right on the bug bite or open cut. It's anti-inflammatory and it will take away the puffiness and the pain, as well as being an antiseptic. So nature has provided an answer for those little nicks and cuts you get hiking, gardening, and outdoors. So I'm standing in front of a white pine tree, and it's a great tree to know because it's everywhere in North America pretty much. The needles contain more vitamin C than oranges or acai or almost anything actually. So first, to identify a white pine, you'll see that the needles grow in a bunch. The white pine is distinct because each bunch of needles is a grouping of 5. Always a grouping of 5. And no other pine tree is like that. So once you have identified the pine as a white pine, and you see that there are, in each little bundle, you see there are 5 needles in each of the little bundles of needles. That's not a technical term, by the way. You can harvest some and make them into a tea. So if you have a cold or a sniffle or you just want some extra vitamin C, that's one way to make this work. However, I have another way I really like to handle white pine. My favorite way to work with white pine is to harvest a bunch of the needles, clean them, and then soak them in vodka with orange rinds for about 8 weeks. And then you could drain it out or continue to let it infuse. And you can sort of use it as like a vitamin C elixir. I have friends that I've given it to that have used it in cocktails. What I like to do is just take a spoonful of it a day. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about wild edible plants. We only covered a few of the many hundreds of varieties of plants in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic region that you could harvest from the wild to eat. But I hope that's just the beginning. I hope that you will go on to learn, no matter where you are in the country, about the plants of your region. In a moment when the world is facing possible food shortages, I encourage you to look outside of the grocery store and realize there are lots of great, nutritious, delicious plants provided for free by nature. Thank you again to Animal Advocates for having me on today, and keep foraging.